From the Fox News radio studios in Midtown Manhattan, it's the fastest growing radio talk show. Brian Kilmeade.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. It's the Brian Kilmeade Show, right in the Eisenhower Building, right in Washington, D.C. A lot going on today. Philadelphia Eagles will be here in the afternoon getting their Super Bowl acknowledgement, and everyone's going to show up. Can you imagine that? Remember when it was so hard and everyone was saying, yeah, don't even invite him, it's getting too controversial? Well, this time around, not only are the Eagles showing up, Saquon Barkley golfed with the president yesterday. He was over in Bedminster in New Jersey. They got a chance to meet for the first time. All this stuff is easy to for the president to avoid, or these athletes to avoid. They could say they have we'll see you at the White House, but instead they want to meet the president. And I don't think it was really happening, was definitely not happening in the first term. I also thought it was great for the president to watch my show last night on One Nation, at which time he mentioned Warren Zeiders, because Warren Zeiders says the president's doing essentially a great job. So did Kelsey Grammer, by the way. So the president had a shout out, not necessarily for the show, but to Warren Zeiders, who, by the way, fantastic story. And I'm going to post that online on all my social media sites. But we're looking at 100 days of the president of the United States. We're looking at a guy that's been doing this for 15 weeks, but doing it again. I cannot believe how many oars he has on the water at the same time. And then I wake up to the fact that now they're putting a focus on North Korea as well. Yes, we're going to see, where are we at with them? Where are we at with their ballistic missiles? How do we bring these guys back in? Now, the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, has not done much since the president became president again. We know they had the first face-to-face meeting in years, maybe ever, between a leader. We know about the historic, that was not given much credence, by the way. We know about the historic meeting that they had, and the results that came out of it were no deal. But there doesn't seem to be the anger that we saw last time. So I look forward to that. This hour, we're going to be joined by Michael Waltz. And Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor, outside the hiccup with the Signal app, which I think everybody's getting used to right now. Waltz has been phenomenal on all aspects, supporting not only what's going on with Iran, not only what's happening in Gaza, not only what's happening in Ukraine, but some of the challenges here, including supporting the border. Here's Michael Waltz yesterday with Maria, cut one.
I introduced Secretary Hegseth at his hearing. I've known him for years. You know what? Let me tell you about the soldiers, sailors, Marines that every day come up to me, come up to him. We just had wounded warriors in the office with the president that say, thank God for Secretary Hegseth. Thank God for President Trump as commander-in-chief. Just 100 days ago, we were more worried about DEI and climate change nonsense. Now we're focused on lethality and winning. That's been, in just over 3 months, the change. And what we owe is the best equipment that is on time, on budget, and lethal to those soldiers and sailors.
So that is, he's referring to the fact that no one's really talking about what Pete has done has changed the whole attitude as at the Pentagon. There's controversy about his staffers and Signal app and usage like that. I think that'll be worked out. What he went out of his way to do yesterday is also point out that Pete Hegseth put together $1 trillion budget, and essentially he's going to get the money. He also has led the charge. His presence and his programs have led the charge to have recruiting highs that date back all the way to 2012. That's how high the levels are. They set the targets lower under the Biden years, and they still didn't hit them. Now they're raising them, and they're going beyond them. Tell me that isn't impressive, considering you have unemployment around, 4%? Usually when people join the military, it's 9%. They need a career. They're worried about the marketplace they'll go in, and that's why they serve. But you have opportunities, and they're still choosing it. Today, there'll be a rally in Michigan, and it's the last state he campaigned in before the polls opened up on Election Day last year. So he wants to go back. Michigan's one of the places with the car manufacturers. When the president comes down with the tariffs, that affects Michigan. When the president knows that Ford builds more cars in America than anybody else. That's great. But they don't build all of a car in America. They still got to get things from overseas. They got to get chips from other countries. And that tariff's affecting the price. But he's going right back to Michigan, essentially saying, buckle up, because things are going to get better. But I got to restructure almost every single trade deal. And in the short, and also find a way to get more jobs here. When you give people greater incentive to build outside the country, they will build outside the country, because not only are they answering for their bottom line, they're answering to their shareholders. So that's what people are going to be talking about. What I was stunned about is how the Democrats are pushing back. And the Democrats are pushing back in a way I think it's just weird. The oligarchy tour has a weird name. There's two socialists, known socialists, Bernie Sanders and AOC, getting decent crowds, but there's no doubt about it, there's plenty of people that didn't vote for Donald Trump that might show up for an alternative crowd. Also, the fact that they're doing the 25-hour talkathon with Cory Booker. I thought that was bizarre. But then you watch what they did over the weekend on Sunday. They really had a sit-in where they sat down and just said bad things about Donald Trump. I really don't understand where they were coming from with it. And I'll tell you, here's a little, I don't know if you've seen some of the singing. I mean, some of the bizarre chants or I don't know if this guy, one of these congressmen, wrote this, but it's just horrific. Listen to this.
You work hard and play by the rules. Here in America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, you should be able to live a comfortable life. Instead of leaning into that vision of bringing the American dream to life, this Republican budget is actually doing the exact opposite.
And so when we're talking about on that chopping block includes things like SNAP. So don't tell me you believe in MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, and then cut the funding that gets people access to the healthy, fresh foods.
And if we build this world from love, yada-da-da-da, yada-da-da, then God will build this world from love.
Now, just give me a second to recover. I mean, I cannot believe that's their plan. Did they end their little sit-in and think to themselves, wow, we've really changed some minds? And that song at the end, Corey, whose idea was that? You need a raise. That really knocked it out of the park. Sit around and complain. Is that the American way? When challenged, when losing power, complain about it. By the way, Hakeem Jeffries goes out of his way to make a equivalent of a civil war, quoting Ulysses S. Grant. So here's Adam Smith yesterday. I got to give him credit. He was on Fox News Sunday, #1. I don't think they want to interview him on other channels. But this is what he said about the reason why they're in this mess. And I'll tell you what, Cory Booker and company, Hakeem Jeffries, and Adam Schiff, who were there, they go a long way to recovering themselves to the American public if they'd admit this. Cut 36.
I do agree completely that President Biden did not do enough to secure the border. There's no question about that. The policies allowed too many asylum seekers in. We were overwhelmed by an immigration problem. There's no question about it, by a migration problem. President Biden did belatedly change that near the end of his term to better enforce asylum laws, and President Trump has continued that. But on the point about the undocumented population, I want to change the law. I want to have a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented population, because we have been dependent upon many undocumented immigrants who have come here, worked, raised families, paid taxes, been part of our community. But no question about it, the Democratic Party did not do enough to secure the border.
So it would have meant a lot more if you said that in year one, because they opened up the border in year one, and would have done a lot more if you said it before even the debate. He also said, I was one of the few that called for Joe Biden to step aside after the debate. If you were with him for 1 minute, you should have called for him to step aside. But now you got the infighting. You got this guy, Hogg, who comes out and says the left has got to start taking more control and wants to primary people with money given to the DNC. Adam Smith weighed in on that, the infighting. Cut 37.
We've got two separate issues at play here. One that I agree with. The Democratic Party needs to be more efficient, more effective about the way we run campaigns and the way we pick candidates. I've been very open and very public. Joe Biden should not have run for a second term. And I was one of the first ones to come out and say he should get out after that debate. And it is astonishing to me that so many in the Democratic Party, after that debate, still argued that Joe Biden was our best shot.
So they have to get it together. But I also think the message they hit together, just because AOC has a great smile, people should look at her record. It doesn't stand. You got to get somebody that accomplished something. and that they got to stand for something. That nobody that they talk about has really done anything. So the obsession with identity politics he brought up, absolutely. The whole not admitting that you had a border problem, that's a big deal. And if he brought up a great point. For the longest time, you heard no immigration reform until you get the border closed. Got it. And it's impossible to close the border. You got to build a wall. The wall gets stopped. They get sued. Can't do it. The materials, the funding, whatever it was, there was always a problem. And I remember Chuck Schumer went up to George W. Bush's during Bush administration, just say, why don't we do comprehensive border immigration reform? But we won't do it until we all agree that the border's sealed. And they said, well, there's too much projection. We're never going to be able to seal the border. The president's actually, if he finishes, he's starting now on 85 more miles of wall. Means much more to go. But if they get the wall and the technology along with it, they could actually, 2 years in, start talking about immigration reform. But you could only do it and talk about some type of road to a different type of citizenship. It can't be complete citizenship to reward people for coming here before. But I also think that you got to quickly maybe award people work visas, the people in the farming communities, the people who work in the factories. You give them work visas with a certain responsibility to go to their home country, whether it's 1 week a year or 2 weeks a year, and then you flood the work visas. You fill out the holes in our workforce. At the same time, you revamp our laws to modernize it. For example, if you marry someone from another country, the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of questioning, the amount of scrutiny takes years and millions of dollars, thousands of dollars. When you're just getting started off, if you're in a traditional couple, you don't have thousands of dollars to get started. Why don't we make it easier? If you marry someone from another country, it checks out. It's not an arranged situation, which is a major issue. Why don't we make it easier there? And of course, the five-star recruits coming out of Stanford, coming out of some of these universities, they want to stay. They're the tops in their class. Why are we sending them back to Bangladesh? Why are we sending them back to France? Why don't we give them an opportunity to stay for 5 years and contribute to the next Google in some way, shape, or form? That type of stuff I think both sides can agree on. But until the president sealed the border, it wouldn't be possible. If I'm a Democrat, I say that. I acknowledge. Can't believe this guy sealed the border. Now, let's do immigration reform. See if we can get an appointment with the president. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show. At the Eisenhower Building, you can't come in, but you can listen in. And keep in mind, BrianKilmeadShow.com give you a chance to listen. You can watch right now, too. I have a great setup here. You click on watch. You can just keep on paging over until you get to us. Don't move. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're in the Eisenhower Building, right across from the White House. We're pleased to be here all morning long on Fox and Friends. And, of course, it was kind of odd to see a press conference early in the morning. It was the press meeting for Caroline Leavitt. She would do it, I guess, every morning at 8:30 because they're going to announce every day what they've been focusing on over the first 100 days and their accomplishments. And today the focus was on border security and immigration. Tom Homan was there to give the address, kind of let everybody know he'd be answering directly. So it was a pretty compliant media room, and they had their guest speaker there. But this is just 2 days after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. On the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Jacqui Heinrich is with us. And Jacqui, what is your role on the committee?
So I'm a board member. I'm one of 9.
Right.
And I'm on a few committees. I'm on the Outreach Committee, the Scholarship Committee, and the Facilities Committee, which is the least exciting of those. It basically means that if there's an overflowing toilet in the White House, I'm the person who gets the phone call. But we had our dinner. I was up on the stage. It was different than most years where we don't have the president. We didn't have an entertainer. I think that people were not unhappy to get out of there earlier and get on to all the festivities surrounding the dinner are sometimes as much of a draw. So,
right.
Maybe the president comes next year. Who knows?
Yeah. Plus, to think about it, even if he said, I want to come, he would have been at the Post funeral.
Yeah.
So he wasn't going to be able to make it anyway. And then when you had the comedian who has an anti-Trump background, they had to make the move. What led into that? Like, who picked the comedian? Did anyone not listen to her comedy?
The entertainer is always the choice of the president every year. Right. So because it's kind of the one perk of being president is you get to pick the entertainer and put on your own dinner. So we all found out about this woman at the same time as everybody else. We had some concerns, obviously, when she went on Tapper and talked about how she was not going to go after both sides, which is, explicitly against our guidance. This is not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be about the kids, the scholarships, the journalism. This is not a platform to make political statements. And then she seemed to sort of throw that guidance out the window and double down on it in another interview. And the decision was made to just focus on the journalism and the kids, because at that point you don't know what she's going to say when she gets up there. After she's purposely flouting what we're telling her is, here are the guidelines. We hired you for this job. And if you don't want to do the job we hired you for, maybe see you later.
The last one I went to, Governor Huckabee was press secretary. And I just watched her eviscerated by the comedian, humorlessly, just literally attacked. And I thought to myself, something's got to change here, because this was just brutal. And I know the president wasn't happy about that. What did you think about, before we go to it, Alex Thompson came up, and he is for Axios. I guess he was getting an award.
Yes, he was.
And he's co-written a book with Jake Tapper, really just talking about the failings of the Biden administration and the lack of transparency on the condition of Joe Biden and who's making the decisions. And before we play the clip, I was wondering what you and Peter thought, because you were the only ones over the course of 4 years asking questions. Where is the president? Who's making these decisions? Is he okay? We didn't understand a word he said. Why does he never call on Fox? So now Alex Thompson said this at the White House Correspondent Center, cut 47.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
Light applause. What's your thought about that?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I mean, I think, first of all, the line about either party being capable of deception, I mean, no kidding. You just gave yourself away. That you would not think that the Democrats would be capable of deception. That's somehow a revelation is stunning to me. I also think that it's not lost on me or some others that they've got a book to sell now. I was a little bit... I was rolling my eyes when the rest of the world caught on to what we had been talking about for so long. And then you saw these stories start to creep out that were like, back last year, I was talking to my sources about this. Well, you just wrote about it now when it's too late. So not just Alex, but others who put out reporting about the president's mental acuity and how he was slipping, really when it was after everyone else had already realized what was going on, just didn't really sit right with me. I'm glad that now there's a come to Jesus moment happening, but I also think back to sitting in the briefing room alongside Ed O'Keefe from CBS, who's asking a question about then President Biden's age, and gets this look from Karine Jean-Pierre like, Ed, you too? Like somehow Jacqui sitting next to Ed, my skepticism was contagious, and like Ed caught it, and now she was looking at him like he was some sort of a
turncoat.
Exactly. But that was what happened in the press, was like you would be maligned by the administration. Remember the whole deepfakes thing? Fakes and deepfakes.
Because when you saw him stuttering and not be able to leave or freezing,
right,
they say that was the internet. That's AI, deepfake.
Right. And it was not. This was pool video. And the level of just, pulling the wool over everyone else's eyes, and then the rest of the media taking their word for it, and then willfully accepting their view where anyone asking about it was a dishonest broker, I thought was just sloppy and lazy. And obviously, people trying to stay in the good graces of the administration and not, hedge that way. But that's not the point of this job. The point of this job is not to be well liked by the people you're covering. It's to get the right answers, the answers that are, the truth.
But Jacqui, the thing is, it's always going to stick out about this, and hopefully it'll never happen again, is who's running the country. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like, Joe Biden, Iran-Contra. It was hard. Bush 41, when he was running for president, didn't want to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. He knew where he was. You could debate on his role in it and what Ronald Reagan knew about it. But this was like, why is he not making any decisions? Like, why do we never see him? Where is he? Why are you putting the lid on so early? And yet it should affect everybody. They should be getting up there doing a stand-up going, for the 7th straight day, we haven't seen the president and the lid's been on at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And, when I ask questions, I don't get an answer, but people were compliant. And then, go ahead.
I do think that they got away with that for so long because that is part of the formula. Every decision that came out of that White House was co-signed by like a group of 20 people. They had to focus group and sort of, come up with a collective answer to everything. And in contrast with President Trump, where President Trump is leading the party, it was the party leading President Biden. He had to make sure he got the progressives and the moderates and that, they could all agree on some kind of message, which is why their messaging often said nothing at all, because they lost the plot in trying to get everyone to agree. But they were able to get away with that for so long because it wasn't just him directing the administration.
Right.
It was everyone else around him, and that was the system from even before he started to really slip.
So what do you think the first 100 days in, what stands out to you?
I think that if you look to other presidencies, and often they want to tout legislative accomplishments in these first 100 days or what they're trying to push through, the margins are where they are, and it's going to be difficult to fill a pothole with Congress the way that it is. I think that we knew day one that the executive actions and executive orders were the blueprint for what he wanted to achieve. And trying to get an early nod from the courts on the scope of his power when it comes to some of these deportation cases, when it comes to rearranging global partnerships, whether it be with the economy or alliances, those objectives, and then also undoing everything that Biden did, if he can undo those things, trying to take the stain off, if you're in the White House now, and see if you can use the eraser, like they did today, and touted a lot of that today with closing the border that was purposely opened. I think shock and awe is an accurate descriptor, but I think that we had the blueprint day one.
Do you think the Liberation Day, on top of the massive immigration pickups, the shutdown of the border, do you think Liberation Day is rolling out differently than they thought? The ramifications, it affected the market so severely.
You mean for the tariffs?
Yeah, from the tariffs.
Yeah, I do. Here's what I think happened. I think that they put a formula together that the world wasn't expecting, and that really, sort of pumped the brakes on everyone's understanding of how this was going to go. And then they were flooded with phone calls. And you did hear from the Treasury Secretary and from the Commerce Secretary that we just couldn't manage the volume while also being respectful to all of these countries that were trying to deal in good faith. So we did the pause for 90 days. Now it gives them some time to actually put together, contours of a plan and get sort of deals in theory, and then.
The Wall Street Journal says they're going to be doing 6 deals a week over the next, up until July, when the 90 days are out. And if it's ever not done, they get the reciprocal.
Yeah.
They get the reciprocal tariffs. It'll be interesting because he says, let's the trade guys worry about the details, but Scott Bessent will sign off on the framework. And I think one person's emerged out of this as credible on all sides, like Steve Mnuchin kind of did. It is Scott Bessent, isn't it?
It is. I think it is because he's a Wall Street guy. He knows the markets. He knew what was happening with the bond market when, you see the 10-year yield go vertical overnight as the tariffs are going into place. And it's like, listen, it takes a long time to build credibility, for the U.S. is a good place to keep your money. And when you start to lose that, it's very hard to get back. And I think that, bringing that understanding to the table, something that Yellen absolutely did not have. She didn't understand the markets. He's able to talk to the president about things that everyday people are really going to pay attention to and sort of see around the corner and make sure that we're not veering into territory that'll be hard to back out of. I think it was smart that they gave themselves some more time to get these deals done. I think they will get the bulk of them done within the 90 days. China's the big question. And we hear from this White House that they are talking actively to China. China insists that there are no talks happening at all, but, who knows when we're going to see those details come out and if it'll be before we see empty shipping containers and that kind of thing.
So here is their representative, their foreign minister spokesperson, when asked, are you talking with the U.S.?
China and the U.S. are not having any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. The U.S. should not confuse the public.
So I talked to somebody, they said today with the White House that we are absolutely talking. Lower level, they're talking. President says that he's talked to President Xi, I don't know when, but the pushback is pretty strong. Evidently, underneath, there's things going on, but it hasn't risen up to the highest level. Are we waiting to see who's going to blink first?
Well, if you take the White House at face value, the blink has already happened, and the conversations are happening. China doesn't want to maybe admit that that's happening, and I think that the president, said Xi called me. He wouldn't answer whether it was after the tariffs or not, but that the lower level negotiations are happening. And Bessent said, speaking off camera to reporters after a speech in Washington last week, that the tariffs will come down in a mutual way because both sides think this is unsustainable. And once they get sort of the contours of an agreement at the lower level, bring the leaders together and get the more substantive deal done. But you might see a mutual lowering before the two leaders even speak. So I think that that's maybe what's coming together right now.
All right. We have the big, beautiful bill. I want to talk to you about that when we get back, because today the Treasury Secretary is going to Capitol Hill to meet with, I guess, the big six. They all have nicknames, but all the players who are going to decide if the major piece of legislation is going to get passed on reconciliation. We're at the White House, across the street from the White House in the Eisenhower Building. Brian Kilmeade Show. Don't move. I am back with Jacqui Heinrich, Washington White House correspondent. Should I say senior executive, the president correspondent? Well, White House Correspondents' Dinner, you're
I am. I'm a board member.
Board member. But what is your new title now? You got elevated.
Here at Fox, I'm a senior White House correspondent.
Right.
Yeah. Gray hair's coming in.
I know this is the most general question you get, but I do think for the people outside who don't do your job, could you talk about how different it is?
Hugely different. I mean, these people have an open door policy, whereas with Biden, I would wait weeks, sometimes months to get a meeting with a lower level press person, and they would just avoid you.
KJP?
KJP, her door was always closed. She would never have time for you. And if she did, it was like you didn't get anything substantive out of it. The briefings were not a place that you go for information. Ever.
By the way, I used to look for the radio show in the morning. I got nothing.
Giant waste of time.
I would take the questions, but the answers were all waste of time.
Giant waste of time. Whereas now, you can barely keep up with the pace of information that's coming your way. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Everyone's very accessible. They're very helpful. And not just with us. I would say, like, with anyone covering this White House. I mean, I see people from all sorts of media up there waiting for Caroline, and her office is full all the time.
He just did an interview with The Atlantic.
Which is incredible, right? He talks to
that's who was on the signal call that the president really disparaged.
Yeah.
And then said you can come in and do an interview.
It's unreal.
Time Magazine, too.
Yep.
Right? So
He talks to them all.
Media Research Center just published a study 2 hours ago that 92% of the network coverage, ABC, CBS, and ABC, NBC, and CBS, 92% is negative. Wow. 89% at this point, first term. Now, that's the first term. He didn't win the popular vote. They said the Russians gave him the election. All the dismissal of Michael Flynn and all the controversy. 92% is negative. Does that number hit you?
I mean,
how does that number hit you?
The only thing that I think about when I look at something like that is also their ratings. And, people obviously elected this president. They elected Republicans across the board. It was a sweep. All the swing states, both chambers of Congress, popular vote, all of it. When you're just throwing rocks at the president as a business model, maybe you're out of step with the views of your viewers, the opinions of your viewership. And not to say that you need to be worshiping, anybody, but to be fair in your coverage, to talk about the issues that matter to them, and to understand what it was that made your viewers support their choices in political office. So if you're just going to go at him with a hammer, do you expect to win? It
did surprise me, the number, because when the election was first over, and there's just no controversy, just over, and that happened, and every battleground state, and we know it was just 49.9%, just short of 50, okay? So I thought there's going to be a change in the way the reporting went. This number did not surprise me because I flip around a lot. Do you flip around a lot?
I do.
I'm always trying to find out what the flip side is, what story that might be good that they're going to avoid. Mm-hmm. But if you flip over to now that we're doing this world thing, we got to see how we're perceived in Ukraine, how we're perceived in Gaza, how we're perceived in these trade deals. Most of that press has been anti-American, negative towards America. And then most of our press is negative towards America. You could understand from the Trumpers' perspective, if you think you're doing the right thing, how you could feel like you're being not treated well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he is right when he says that, you know, he's had it tougher than any other president.
Sure.
That's true. I do think that, you know, some of the shock and awe is intended to exploit that. I think that it puts, you know, he likes the optics of this at the same time.
Right.
Because putting this conversation in a space where, you know, it's him against the liberal media, I think it works for him too. So, you know.
Jack, you came in on your day off. I appreciate it so much. Jacqui, Heinrich, thanks so much.
Thank
and we
you.
look forward to your fantastic coverage as senior correspondent.
Thanks, Brian.
Back in a moment, Brian Kilmeade Show.
But there are two ways to do it. One is to get a deal that would prevent them from doing that by dismantling their nuclear infrastructure. You have to dismantle their nuclear infrastructure. And that means not that they will not enrich uranium, but that they will not have the capacity to enrich uranium, which means you destroy the centrifuges, you remove, of course, the nuclear material that is already enriched, and there are a few other things that you have to do, but that's the crux of it. The real deal that works is a deal which removes Iran's capacity to enrich uranium for nuclear weapons.
Go. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, weighing in. He does not optimistic that any deal with Iran is going to be successful, and pointed out in the past that Israel has had to take things upon themselves, whether it's Iraq or whether it's Syria, and whether it was going after Iran after they went after them. With me right now is National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Mike, great to see you.
Yeah.
In the Eisenhower Building. Out of all our interviews, this is the first. But you really have outdressed me. Do you have a clothing deal with the White House? Or do you have to pick out your...
I wish. This is all personal.
Is it really?
All personal, no taxpayer funds.
Do you have to pick out swatches, or do you take it off the rack?
Oh, I'm an off the rack. I'm a North Florida guy. Right?
Oh, okay.
I'm a redneck from the west side of Jacksonville. There's no swatches going on.
I understand. So what was your morning like? I know today is 100. This is every day is a different theme. Today was the border security. I was surprised to see the role of the military in securing the border. I had a chance to go into Cheyenne Mountain to NORAD, and I saw the way they. With the military insisted on doing at the border, as well as the Coast Guard. How important is that element of this?
Well, President Trump campaigned on it, and if you take a step back, a core function of our sovereignty, a core function of our national security is protecting our border. And that's an all of government, whole of government approach that I think, frankly, the left walked away from. You saw a wide open border under the last administration, not just the 20 million plus people that have come in that are taxing our services from roads to bridges to hospitals to schools, but 8 ISIS operatives were rolled up in 3 different cities. You have the cartels working with foreign terrorism. And those leaders, you had both with the fall of Afghanistan, a return of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So heck yeah, the military is being used to defend our border. And that's not just with troops physically on the border. As you saw with NORAD, that's also any type of aerial incursions. We're working through our planning now for the Iron Dome, now called the Golden Dome. From cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, updating those radars, updating our responses, and even undersea or any type of drone threats. Remember all of the drones over New Jersey and sites in North Carolina, Florida?
And the answer was, how do we stop this before you guys took over?
Right.
And the answer was, I don't know. Essentially,
from the previous administration, before we're working hard on it right now. So it's look, it's all of the above, and this is part of the America First agenda. Let's focus on our borders and our security and our safety first.
At the risk of impressing you too much, someone walked me through.
That's hard to do.
I know. Someone walked me through what the Golden Dome would look like, and even I can understand it. And I thought when I brought it up, they were going to say, "Well, we hope." They go, "No, here's the plan," and they showed me roughly what they're working on. And now they're working on a cost analysis to present. So I was amazed.
And it will be in the president's budget in these upcoming funding rounds. So this isn't just some kind of marketing ploy or what have you. This is from the space layer to deal with hypersonics all the way down to drones buzzing over sensitive sites.
What could you tell me that emerged out of the St. Peter's meeting at the Basilica, as the president said, best office he was ever in?
Yeah.
but he did push Macron back to say this is going to be a one-on-one. Got that confirmed this morning, so you don't have to confirm it. And then when they did sit one-on-one, if body language means anything, it looked intense, and it looked like a mutual, respectful, impactful conversation would emerge.
Well, I could tell you, Brian, kind of like in golf where you have, at least for me, you have 90 terrible, tough shots, and then you have that one kind of amazing moment. Just standing there in that moment with those two leaders in that place of all, surrounded by the marble, the president loved the gold, in a place of worship in St. Peter's, and having those two leaders face to face doing tough diplomacy. I thought it will be one of these iconic, historic moments. But then I have to tell you, walking out those doors and seeing 250,000 people there of all faiths, world leaders, all there to celebrate and honor the Pope. And then, the role the Catholic Church has. It just really all came together in a special way. Look, the president's determined to end the war, and he's determined to apply whatever pressure he has to apply to both sides to end it.
You met him personally. I haven't, but I've had thousands of hours of interviews by this time. I couldn't be more impressed with Zelensky. I'm not one person who thinks there's a secret agenda. I don't think he's socking money away in banks in Cayman Islands. As a leader, I think a lot of the time he's a little angry because he's been at war. You can understand spending anyone. He literally feels like he's been at war for 3 straight years. And the people that are dying, he actually knows their families.
Yeah. Well, I will say Ukraine was is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. We always have to guard the taxpayer dollars, and there have been billions going in. And I don't think, remember I was sitting in Congress, the previous administration had all of the appropriate oversights going in. So we have to keep a hard eye on that. But secondly, yes, he has been at war, but we have to find opportunities to end the war. And one could have only thought, rather than trying to correct, but rather than trying to correct the president of the United States and the vice president in the Oval Office when he was invited there for the first meeting and could have sat side by side with the president, signing a minerals deal that bound our economies together for the foreseeable future. You want to talk about a security guarantee, that would have been phenomenal. I think that was a historic and missed opportunity. But look, President Trump is who he is. He's determined to play out diplomacy. And you've seen him sit down with both sides, call both sides. And as the NATO Secretary General said, the NATO Secretary General, only President Trump could have broken the deadlock. 100 days ago, we're here for the 100-day.
Well, I think he said it to me, actually. Yeah. I'm trying to impress you twice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But 100 days ago, there was nothing. There was just this endless stalemate, meat grinder. And now we have, it's tough. It's going to zig back and forth, but we have a process underway.
How do you feel about Vladimir Putin? The president says he might be playing me. My words, he said he might be just playing.
I think the president said it might be kind of tapping me along. The president's determined to apply whatever pressure he needs to get this war ended. And you've heard him talk about banking. You've heard him talk about sanctions on Russian energy. I think it's going to come back around. We've got a great negotiator in Steve Witkoff.
Do you think so?
Also,
but do you think he should go in there without any Russian experts on his side? Do you think he should go in there by himself with Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, but at the same time, when you go in there with a slew of people, you don't have the same kind of intimate conversations. You don't have the same kind of honest, frank conversations. So one-on-one, you just saw it with President Trump and Zelensky. There weren't, Ukraine or Russia experts sitting around. Sometimes you have those, those moments.
But Witkoff seems much more optimistic than the president. The president didn't seem as optimistic on the plane ride home. You were with him. Mm-hmm. Then Steve Witkoff made his statements afterwards. Why is that?
Well, look, at the end of the day, I don't think there's any disconnect there, Brian. At the end of the day, does Russia want to end this war and have a better relationship, not just with the United States, but with the entire world? That's what we're sitting in front of them, and that's what Steve Witkoff's sitting in front of.
Here's my worry.
Yeah.
They've changed their whole economy to be a warlike economy. So they put people to work to build missiles and rockets and tanks or whatever they think they need, drones. And when you tell those people the war's over, we don't need that stuff anymore, they're going to need jobs. This is a war like their war. So these people are not going to have jobs. They're going to say, why do we fight this war? How many thousands are dead? And he doesn't want that. And that's maybe he doesn't want to end this war for that reason.
But in fairness, you have those same questions on the Ukrainian side in terms of billions of dollars coming in, and they've created a war economy in many ways.
Do you think they're
as
equal,
well?
though?
So I mean, both sides have to want to end this,
Right?
And that is going to require concessions.
Don't you think the Ukrainians?
Well, look, I mean, just recently you had people talking about kicking every Russian off of every inch of Ukrainian soil, and we're just going to fight. And if you question that goal, then they're going to, I guess, just fight in perpetuity. Are we truly saying it's in our national interest and feasible to kick the Russians out of Crimea? Is that possible? And how long will that take? And how much treasure will that take? And how many lives will that cost? That's what President Trump is asking. I mean, how many people are going to die to move a line another 10 kilometers either way?
I hear you. But I think there's a difference in the diplomatic world that you're more familiar with of saying, I know we're not getting Crimea back, but I'm not going to give it up. So there's a way of putting that language in.
And you've seen that with North Korea, South Korea. You've seen that with East-West Germany. Right, and all of those.
You stole it,
and all of those.
But I'm not going to keep this war going.
Sure. Right. And no one, to be clear, no one is demanding that the Ukrainians recognize Crimea as Russia.
So, is it true? I kind of asked you this before you sat down. I just started reading today that you guys are queuing up a North Korean policy. I thought to myself, man, you have so many balls in the air. Are we really tackling North Korea now?
Look, the president had phenomenal engagement with Kim Jong-un in his first term. I'm not going to get ahead of anyone in moving forward. But I can tell you, we have a lot on our plate, and we're very focused on ending the largest land war in Europe. And the president's determined Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Reopening waterways. I mean, Biden left us a mess, Brian. The worst violence in Israel and Gaza in 20 years, and how that is going to unfold. But he's also had, just in 3 months, huge successes. Taken on the cartels, Panama ending Belt and Road, the first Latin American country ending Belt and Road.
Is that going to be a focus to start ending Belt and Road?
Well, I mean, just really,
like
but
El
look,
Salvador?
I mean, it's reintroducing the United States into our own hemisphere.
Yep.
Right, from the Arctic in the north to the border to Panama Canal, all the way down to Mile in Argentina. We have the food security, the energy, the critical minerals that we need in our Western Hemisphere.
And obviously you have a great relationship with El Salvador, but they're at the Belt and Road. Argentina is co with China, but you have a great relationship with Melu. So there's obviously there, if we show an interest, they will too. Mike Waltz, thanks so much. That's the security advisor.
Good to be with you.
On to your 20 more meetings. I appreciate you coming up 4 floors in the Eisenhower building. Keep it here, everyone. Brian Kilmeade Show on the road in Washington.
So if it's not football, what is it? Are there racial undertones here? Racist undertones? You be the judge. Racism is so hard to sort of grasp and prove, but it just stinks. It smells of racist undertones, of too many white people in charge in this league who just roll their eyes at both father and son at Colorado.
Well, I couldn't believe that, but I was somewhat expecting it. And they're talking about the biggest drop compared to predictions and results. And I think NFL draft history, Shedeur Sanders, top recruit, high-ranked passer coming out of Colorado, famous dad, who was telling people before, his dad was telling everybody, there are certain teams my son's not going to play for. All right, Eli Manning decided not to play for San Diego, or the Mannings didn't. So the question is racism involved? Well, that question was quickly answered by a good friend of the show, Sage Steele, who did this thing called research. And I thought it would be great, as everyone talks about the draft over the last 4 days, and this story in particular, to get her perspective. And Sage Steele, with an outstanding podcast of her own, joins us now. Sage, welcome back.
Brian, so good to see you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Skip Bayless, I know you know him. Your thoughts about his conclusion. Is that a racist situation? Is that why Shedeur Sanders wasn't drafted till late?
In my humble opinion, no, and no. Hell no, absolutely not. the reason I went on my social media and decided to do research to back up my humble opinion is because of the things that people like Skip said. I have known Skip for almost 20 years. I really love and respect Skip Bayless. I think he's way off in this, but it doesn't surprise me. Skip, along with many, many, many other talking heads on a million different platforms, of course, immediately go to race. It's so disappointing to me, and you and I have talked about things like this before, Brian, because it's low-hanging fruit, it's lazy, and it's the boy who cried wolf, because there are certainly examples of racism. To me, this is not one. If you do any homework based on just the scouting reports on this young man, Shedeur Sanders, I mean, there were many, many inconsistencies and concerns over some of the intangibles, not just what happens to X's and O's on the field. So do some homework, calm down, and don't be lazy.
Yeah, I think out of the first 2 rounds, I think 59 players were black. I think over half the quarterbacks in the NFL are black. I think that if the first player overall in the draft was taken, according to reports, was black. So I just think that there are times in life where people are maybe inadvertently or inadvertently have racial bias. You know, they don't even realize they're doing it in some cases. They're generational. And other times, I just think they look at a player and say, I can't take a risk with that pick on my team. And evidently, he tanked quite a few interviews and had to have a little bit of an attitude. Now, I don't really ever remember that, you know, because teams, especially teams that could make you generationally wealthy, would ever do, you know, players would ever take that risk. But I think he might have. Or do you think it's something his dad said?
I mean, there are many things that it could be. I think it is proven based on the scouting reports that many of these teams, their directors of scouting, their general managers, the coaches who were in on those interviews, they're anonymous right now. It eventually will come out, but they are talking about how it seemed like he was disinterested. It seemed like he didn't want to be there at times. I wasn't there. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. But at the end of the day, these NFL teams, owners, coaches, they don't care. They want to win and will do whatever it takes to win. So you've got to trust that within them and look at the other possibilities. Also, I want to point out this. When you talk about racism, and so many people, including Mel Kiper Jr., who I absolutely love on ESPN, have said the NFL is a disaster because of this evaluating talent. The NFL, Roger Goodell, does not tell anyone what to do, right? He's like the director of the board, and then the coaches and GMs and owners make those decisions. Look at the decision makers. So if you're talking about the teams being racist, I mean, you've got, last year there were 6 black head coaches. I believe there's 4 now. We'll see what happens. Last year there were 10 black GMs in the league. So are all those coaches and assistant coaches and directors of scouting and general managers, are they racist too? Like, tell me how you are determining that this is racism. And that is the part where I talk about people being lazy. Again, we'll find out, Brian. I believe more and more people will talk about why Shedeur Sanders fell. Is it historic? Absolutely. Even when you look back at Aaron Rodgers in 2007, I think that was when he fell dramatically. Brady Quinn fell dramatically as well in his draft. They're white. So is that not racism? Like, it's just inconsistent. And I want people to just be genuine with their thoughts, do their homework, do their research, and I cry foul on this one.
Here's Tom Pelissaro. He's another NFL Network analyst, Cut 44.
It is now well documented some of his formal interviews did not go well. One assistant coach told me in all his years it was the worst formal interview he'd ever been through. People said that Shedeur was trying to dictate how he wanted things to go and made them feel small. Even at the pro day, the entire Big 12 had an event in Dallas. Shedeur was there, but did not work out. He had a showcase instead in Colorado. For a player who had a variety of questions both about the talent level, how he would fit into an NFL system, how he would adjust from his play style in college, but also about the potential culture shock of, for the first time, playing for someone who is not his father. There were opportunities that Shedeur Sanders could have taken there. He seemed to feel as if he was in an elite category where he could choose the few teams he wanted to go to. Now some of those very same teams that might be considering taking Shedeur today didn't get those opportunities to answer their question.
Say that's pretty much what you were saying, right?
Yeah. And there's another thing that I retweeted the other day. It's from an account called First Round Mock, and he is a former scout for the New York Jets. And it was incredibly detailed. It was that and then more. So I would love people to take a look at that. Again, the football part of this, and why potentially it took till pick 144 for Shedeur Sanders to hear his name. Number two, I think something very important to consider is the public relations aspect of this. And when public relations, but also team chemistry. And when you're making these decisions, you have to say whether it's Shedeur Sanders, whether it's Deshaun Watson, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, when you bring a big name into a locker room, how will they gel? What will that chemistry be like? And is it worth it if they come with a lot? Is it worth it to bring them in based on how it may affect team chemistry? Will the team as a whole accept that person based on the maturity of the team? There's so many different factors that no one is considering, but that report from Pelissaro and many, many other people who just want this to be about football, there's enough evidence there that makes you at least question those most important characteristics of a quarterback, and race should be way down. Once again, they're creating more division intentionally for many of the talking heads, and they are just trying to make this about football.
Right, Sage Steele with us now, tapping into a year or decades in sports. Lastly, the most cruel prank that I can remember took place in Shedeur Sanders was the victim, and this ends up being the 20-year-old son of the former head coach of the New York Jets. Listen.
Hey, is this Shedeur? This is Mickey Loomis here, the GM of the New Orleans Saints. How you doing? This is Mickey Loomis here, GM of the Saints.
How you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
Good, been waiting on you.
Yeah, we have. It's been a long wait, man. We're going to take you with our next pick right here, man.
This ain't gonna be nothing to you.
Hey, but you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, man. Sorry about that.
So he has since apologized. They tracked it down to him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the son of the defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich of the Atlanta Falcons. His name is Jacqui. He's a 20-year-old kid. I think it's disgusting. I think it's awful. I think it's heartbreaking. Most importantly, think what you want about Shedeur Sanders and his father, Deion Sanders. That's unimaginable. This kid has been suffering enough with the world watching, and then you're going to go do that? To me, there is no excuse, and it's easy to cast stones from here, right? But I do wonder, and Brian, you're a parent. Like, what would you do as a parent if that is your son? And again, the Atlanta Falcons have apologized. The young man has apologized as well. I don't know that that's going to be enough. Apparently, he did talk to Shedeur Sanders as well. But the coach was at his home. The son was visiting the parents, and he walked away from his iPad for a second. The kid walked by, looked, got the number, wrote it down. I don't believe the defensive coordinator of the Falcons did anything wrong there. He's in his own home. How would you discipline your son for a prank like that? It's one thing to do it, bad enough. It's another thing to then post the video. So it's really heartbreaking because it was at the expense of Shedeur Sanders. But my goodness, you hope you raise your kids to make good decisions and to be kind to others, and that's the opposite of what happened.
My sense is this is what, usually when something shows such terrible judgment, it's not the first time. My sense is this guy has done more than just this. I don't know if an apology would suffice, but the cruelty is unimaginable. Also, the security of the coach. When you get these numbers, you have to secure these numbers. I know you never thought your son would turn on you, but almost nobody outside the NFL coaches conference or the coaches committee in the NFL got those numbers.
No, absolutely. But I wonder, did he get up to use the restroom and leave the laptop up and come right back? I mean, I would do the same thing in my house, frankly, and I have a bunch of numbers too. So it's heartbreaking. It's so sad. And hopefully a lesson, especially as these kids try to go viral, stop, think about it, and then think about what it would be like if you were in those shoes. And obviously he didn't do that.
All right, Sage. And congratulations. I saw online, you're on social media, you're now engaged.
Yes, he shocked me, Brian. He got me. And I'm old. I have a wedding to plan quickly here. Let's go, right?
All right, let's go do it. That'll be great. He's a lucky guy. Sage Steele, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
So border crossings are down about 99% in 100 days. Not many people, even the most optimistic, thought it would be this successful. Perhaps except my next guest, Tom Homan, who's the border czar, and has been working all elements of trying to secure our borders and collect the millions that got here over the last 4 years. And he's my guest. Tom, great to see you. Today's your day. You opened up at 8:30 this morning with a press conference. Day one, 100 days in. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a great day, celebrating the success of President Trump and the men and women of the United States Border Patrol, right? As you said, border crossing down 96, 97, 99, depending on what week you look at. But we have the most secure border in the history of this nation right now.
Right.
President Trump was able to accomplish in 7 weeks what Joe Biden couldn't or wouldn't do in 4 years.
Wouldn't. You believe that it was intentional?
Absolutely. I mean, he's the first president in the history of the nation who came into office and unsecure the border on purpose. He said he's going to end IC tension. He's going to put a moratorium on deportation. He's going to give free health care to illegal aliens. He's going to have amnesty and DACA. You make those type of promises to the whole world, that's not an accident. Most people in the entire world would come and take advantage of that giveaway.
So if you look at the Marines on the Mexican southern border, you look at the military on our southern border, when you look at the elimination of catch and release and the CBP app, out of all those elements, what's the most important? What is the most to stop the flow? Because we used to have an overwhelming population in the remain in Mexico, right? They were stopped, they had to stay there. That doesn't exist today. Why is that?
No catch and release. You're not getting released in the country. You can come to our border, but you're going to be returned.
So they don't try.
They don't try because the last administration, they knew if you cross the border illegally, you'd be processed within 24 hours and flown to the city of their choice. That ended. When you come to our border, you're not going to be allowed to enter the country. Like under President Trump, since day one, we've had 9 people released, as I talked about this morning. 4 were material witnesses. We needed them in a criminal investigation. 4 were significant medical issues. The other one was a humanitarian case. We ended catch release. People know that we're enforcing laws, and there's no way you're going to get in this country by crossing the border illegally.
Educate me on this. Obama, they said, sent out 200, 300,000, got deported. Those 300,000 did not get hearings. So why are you supposed to be giving hearings to these people? I don't get it. Like, when we round people up, they're supposed to get their due process. It's not possible, is it?
The same people are demanding all these extra hearings, due process. Where were they when you had 10.5 million people come to our borders, released millions of the country under violating the statute of parole and asylum? I mean, where were they when you got a 600% increase in sex trafficking? Where were they when 250,000 Americans died from fentanyl on the open border? Where were they, where no inspected terrorists or record numbers coming across the border? They didn't follow the legal process to get here. Now all of a sudden they demand a legal process to deport them. They didn't care there was no vetting done to get here, but now they want vetting done, everyone being removed. We're enforcing laws of this country, and we're following the statutes and federal law. Alien Enemies Act is an act that was written by Congress, enacted by Congress. We're using every tool in our tool shed to make this country safe again, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
How long do you need the military at the border, knowing that there's a budget to be aware of?
We need them there. We need them there now. And look, yesterday, like I said, we only had 33 gotaways. That number needs to get to 0. But if we pull back now.
Yesterday at 33?
Last 24 hours, 33 gotaways. Wow. Down from 1,800.
How do you know they're gotaways? So do you catch them on video and you can't stop them?
On video, drone traffic, or sensor traffic. And but going from 1,800 on average a day to 33 is pretty good. It's 33 too many. But I think you look at the number of people released. Like I said, we released 9, and at the same time period we released 9. Joe Biden released 184,000. But we need the military on the border. Like Pete Hegseth said, who I love Pete. He said a great thing by saying they defended borders all over the world. Now they're defending our border. I think they're where they should be.
So who decides who gets on that plane and gets flown out to El Salvador or other people? What goes into that? Do you play a role in that?
I play an oversight role, but ICE really depends. They create a manifest. They work very closely with DOJ and Department of State. And that's what's good. I sent these many people through no due process. No due process. We spend hundreds of hours on every illegal alien to ascertain, to ensure they're a member of TDA, MS-13. A lot of due process, hundreds of hours. So we got the Department of Justice at the table. We got the Department of State at the table. We got DOD at the table. Every day we meet. There's a lot of due process to make sure that everybody we remove is a public safety threat or national security.
So we got this morning. It came out in the Wall Street Journal. Trump to sign order requiring nationwide list of sanctuary cities and states. How does that help you?
Sanctuaries are sanctuary for criminals. When you knowingly release an illegal alien public safety threat back in the community, it makes it more dangerous for the community, of course, makes it more dangerous for our officers, and makes it more dangerous for the illegal alien. We want to take possession of the public safety threat inside a jail, where they choose to lock somebody in a jail cell. Give us access in the jail. It's much more efficient.
But what is making a list of having them, just to be able to call them out? And
we're going after all of them.
Okay.
Sanctuaries are sanctuary criminals, and we think they're violating federal law. I mean, every elected mayor, governor, and city council person, they would all, you think they all want public safety threats
you would think
in the
so.
community.
Great. Tom Homan's had a great 100 days. How after 4 years? What's this border going to look like after 4 years? It's going to be great. Tom Homan, thanks so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.